James Morton, saxophonist.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. How would you describe what you do?
Well, what I do, I'm an alto saxophonist.
Yeah.
Inspired by jazz music and also big time funk music and a lot of the Hammond organ music of the 60s.
Okay.
Campbell Adderley, Maceo Parker. Also, I'm lucky enough to work with some of my idols. Andy Sheppard, Bristol-based tenor saxophonist, who's phenomenal. One of the biggest jazz exports I think of this country's ever had. And I've had the very lucky opportunity to know Andy and work with him. And also Pee Wee Ellis, who was James Brown's musical director and tenor saxophone player and songwriter, and he also worked with Van Morrison. And Pee Wee's also, I mean, I grew up listening to Pee Wee, you know, and now I play with him in different scenarios, so that's incredible to...
That's got to be like a dream come true.
It kind of is, man, yeah, you know, it's incredible to have that direct experience with someone like that, you know, who's been such influence on me musically.
And would you say that all those influences come from like growing up as a kid, or is that something you got into a bit later? Or?
Both. I think that I was influenced by James Brown music. I mean, you might be able to start by looking at me. I'm not a beard scratcher. You know, I like to get funky and I like grooves, and so a lot of that James Brown music and the meters and things like that. I was listening to that when I was a teenager, and you know, sort of 60s sampled hip hop. You know, I was into that, and then jazz came for me a bit later on. Even though when I was a kid, my mum and dad were always playing Charlie Parker in the house, and you know, Charles Mingus and those things, and also Motown. Yeah. You know, so I grew up listening to quite a wide variety of music, and then in my latter years, sort of, I'd say after the age of 18, then when I really started to study jazz and the way it works and techniques of the harmony and what it is really, started deconstructing it. Then I got more passionate about listening to the music and exploring that more.
But it's not an easy type of music to learn, is it? I mean, a lot of guys might think, well, I'll get into indie, or I'll get into rock, or I'll get into something else. But jazz it's a tough thing.
Yeah, I mean, jazz, you know, it's a funny term. You know, it's a term that scares a lot of people. But for me, I mean, the jazz really comes from the blues, and for me, the blues is an easy thing to understand. It's emotional, heartfelt music based around 3 chords, like rock and roll. You know, so I think jazz grew from the roots of blues music, and that's really right now in my life where I'm looking now is back further to the roots of where this music came from, and really just that feeling, you know. And we all know what the blues sounds like, you know. Like countless rock tunes are based on the blues, and it's that emotional feeling, you know, which I'm really looking for.
Well, I think you certainly get that, but a lot of people admire what you do. Do you feel that it comes from an innate talent that you've got, or is it just huge amounts of practice that you put in to do what you do?
I think it's a bit of both. I think, you know, I think obviously I have some affinity for music and the saxophone in particular. You know, but I think there becomes a point where, however talented you are at whatever you're doing, where you can only get so far until you start putting some serious work in, and that makes a difference, you know, with the outcome result and how far you can go with it. At some point in one's musical life, no matter how much raw talent one might have, you need to put the hours in at some point. Usually during the 20s, you know, you need to put in. I mean, when I was about 22, I started to take my music seriously. Before that, you know, I was kind of riding off the fact I could play a little bit and I was young and all that. And then I realised that I needed to put some serious work in. And then you know, for a year or so, I was practicing 8 hours a day. You know, which was pretty full on, and that changed my playing. And now I like to practice, you know, 3 hours a day if I can, 4 hours a day sometimes, maybe more sometimes. But just keep that. The most important thing I think is to do regular practice, you know, even a little bit regularly is good, you know. But I think at some point, if you're serious about music, you do need to put some hours in, you know.
And what is that, learning new licks, or listening to stuff and trying to copy it? Or?
Sure, that's very important, transcription. I mean, having technical facility on your instrument or with your voice, because the voice is an instrument too, that allows you to express yourself, I think, and without that, your expression is limited because you can't physically say what you want to say.
Yeah.
And then there's all the transcription, which is very important. Knowing a bit of music theory is important too. You know, it's important to understand why things sound like they do. Yeah. You know, that again gives you a wider scope to manipulate notes and chords. You know, and listening is so important. You know, listen to as much as you can, and learn, copy people. You know, in fact, at music college there was a phrase, I think, I can't remember who it was, but one of my tutors at music college said, "Don't borrow music, you've got to steal it, because that's yours. If you borrow it, you've got to give it back, so you've got to steal it." And I think he was implying that, you know, if you really need to learn some stuff that the great players were doing, you know, and absorb that, and once that's absorbed into you, that just becomes part of your language and part of your facility.
And I guess that's from any kind of genre as well. I suppose you're not thinking about this or this.
You know, I don't sort of think in terms of jazz. To me, it's just all music, you know. And it's, jazz is such a strange word. I said before, you know, a lot of people are scared by the word jazz, and I am a bit, to be honest. You know, it's just the thing is about jazz is that it incorporates so much of what makes music that once you have an understanding of jazz, you have the facility once again to pretty much go anywhere you want, you know.
Yeah. Right, well, I've got some final quick fire questions for you.
Go for it.
Doesn't take too much to answer these.
All right.
Right. CD or MP3?
CD, because I like having hard copies of things, I like having the work, artwork, all that stuff. I like, CD.
Okay. Bourbon or beer?
Bourbon.
Bebop or funk?
Funk.
Piano or guitar?
Ooh. Oh. Gonna say piano.
Curry or Chinese?
Oh, I love both.
And finally, fame or fortune?
They're both the same thing, I believe. Fortune.
Right. Yeah. James Morton, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.